you can print them out and what they are. So a variable is a way for you to store some information, to store some data. We need to be able to store information about our game for later use. For instance, if we ask the user to type in his name or his birthday or something, we need to remember that. We can't just forget it right away. Variables are how you hold on to that information. It's how we're going to know if somebody has a checker piece on the right square or something like that. We use variables extensively in all of our programs. So let's start with one of the more basic variable types, and that's integer. And the way we declare an integer is we type int for int, and then a space, and then we name it. So it can be whatever name we want. Let's call it int kittens, okay? So this is our variable name kittens, and it's type integer. What that means is it can hold whole numbers, right? It can hold 0, 1, 2, -1, anything like that. So now that we have our variable, we have to give it something. We have to give it a value. So what we need to do is type equals and then whatever value we want it to have. So let's go ahead and set it equal to 100 because I like kittens. Okay, we want lots of kittens. And then always end with a semicolon. Now, kittens is 100. So basically the way you need to think about it is that this, whenever you use it in the future, is the number 100, right? So if we go down here and we type cout kittens, we can do that. In Dell, we're going to get 100, right? It's not going to type kittens to the screen because we didn't put it as a string. If we do that, if we put quotation marks around it, then it will say kittens on the screen. That's the difference, right? If we want to see out the variable, we don't use any quotation marks. So kittens is equal to 100 now. And we can actually do some cool things. We can do math, right? What if we want another kitten, okay? Well, how do we increase the number of kittens we have by 1? Well, we could say kittens equals, if I can type, equals 101. Now, whenever we do cout kittens, it's going to say 101, even though we already set it to 100 here. Whenever we typed this equals again, it basically overwrote what was in kittens, right? Because kittens was holding the number 100. It overwrote it with 101. And we can do other stuff too. We can do math. We can say kittens equals kittens plus 1. And this will do the same thing. The way these statements work is it evaluates from right to left. So let's start here, right? Kittens equals 100. Then we go to the next line. What is kittens here? Kittens is 100. What's 100 plus 1? It's 101. So this part is 101. Kittens equals 101. So we should get cout 101. Okay, so you can do all sorts of cool stuff with variables. We can hold on to them. We can take away a kitten, but we don't want to take away a kitten. No way. Now there's one other variable type I want to show you today, and that's the float. So we could say float kittens. But it wouldn't really make sense because what a float is it's a floating point number. It's a decimal basically. So what you would do with a float is you could say 0.8, right? So now we have 100.8 kittens. We'll say we have a kitten that's slightly smaller than all of the other kittens. Now whenever you have a float, typically whenever you are typing 100.8, you're going to want to put an F here. You might get a little warning down here if you're not using it, because if you don't put this F here, it thinks you're referring to a variable called a double, which is pretty much the same thing, but it has twice as many bits in its variable. It's a much bigger variable and it can hold way more decimal points. It can hold way more numbers. But that's not really important. Float is plenty. We're not doing some scientific simulation of the universe. Float is just fine for now. So we'll go ahead and put an F here. And then when we hit play, it's going to say 100.8, right? We have 100.8 kittens. And if we wanted to add some strings in here, remember we can do that. You have kittens. Now this is going to say you have 100.8 kittens, right? Because remember, you can do that. You can chain together all of these different strings together with a variable. You can do that with a cout statement and it will work just fine. And remember, you can do math with floats and ints. Now what happens if you take two variables and try to multiply them together? Well, it works exactly as you would expect. Let's say daddy kittens equals 200.0f, and then mommy kittens equals 200.0f. So if we multiply daddy kittens times mommy kittens, we're going to get what? Do y'all know your basic math? 40,000. We're going to get 40,000 kittens, right? We can do multiplication, we can do division. What's 200 divided by 200? Okay, we're going to get 1, right? You can do all sorts of cool stuff. We're going to go more over math operations later, but this is what's great about variables. They give us a number that we can hold on to, and then we can manipulate the number later. If we want to add more numbers to it, say we added more kittens because mommy and daddy kittens had babies, we can do that. We can do all sorts of stuff. This is going to be sort of a basis for our games, right? Because we might need to be able to store hit points. We might need to be able to store how much damage you do or something like that. So we could say float player damage. This is going to be how much damage the player does. And then we could say float zombie health. Okay, so if the player does 100 damage and the zombie has 200 health, then if we say zombie health equals zombie health minus player damage, that basically means what? The zombie got hurt by the player, right? Because we're going to take however much damage the player does and subtract it from the zombie's health. So if we see out zombie health right here, we should get 100 because the zombie just took damage, right? So we're going to explore more about variables in the future, and we're going to explore how to make these zombies come to life.